Welcome to the Evolution Magazine Live Series. It is April 8th, 2021, and we are broadcasting live from Happy Rock Farms in Kansas City, Missouri. Tonight we have Eric McSwain of the Missouri Cannabis Industry Association and our own show producer, Clayton Stallings of the Evolution Magazine, with special guest Dale Sky Jones of Oaksterdam University, talking about careers in cannabis. Our show will get underway in just a few moments, but first, a word from our sponsors. The Missouri Cannabis Industry Association has been our longest-running show sponsor, while providing quality education over many topics in partnership with area cannabis professionals. MCIA is dedicated to a free cannabis market to create supplies and prices that are patient-friendly, with initiatives to support adult-use cannabis, to protect home growers' rights, and expand the caregiving program. Go to mocia.org to learn about memberships, to learn about their certified caregiving program, and learn how to get involved. Thank you, MCIA, for being a show sponsor. Welcome to Coco Labs. The Coco Labs team is very excited and grateful to be a part of the emerging Missouri medical cannabis industry, providing the industry with high-quality concentrates, vapor products, RSO, and edibles. With a limited number of products rolling out this April, they will continue to build their product line throughout the year. Check them out online at cocolabsco.com to learn more about the products they offer. The Coco Labs team would like to thank everyone for this amazing opportunity to serve you. Kansas City Cannabis Company, redefining the approach to improving the quality of life of its community by investing in an extensive educational program for staff and patients alike. With a curated and thoroughly tested menu of premium products, Kansas City Cannabis Company is setting the bar for product knowledge and variety while offering a patient experience unmatched in the industry. With a wide range of discounts, incentives, and access to affordable medicine, guarantees Kansas City Cannabis Company will meet the needs of every patient and leave a lasting impression you won't soon forget. Join in the grand opening celebration along with the Evolution Live Series, product vendors, DJs, food trucks, prize bags, and more on 420 in Blue Springs, Kansas City Cannabis Company, the grand opening. Tonight's video is provided by Cat King Films. Check this out. Cat King Films is offering promotional content, commercials, training videos, wedding videos, and documentary-style video production at an affordable price. A free consultation comes with every project to ensure that it is personalized to your brand. Check out previous projects by exploring the different sections on the newly launched website at catkingfilms.com.
And are we good? Sorry about that. Hey, let's live shows are fun, you guys. You know, we've been doing this for actually a year now. We just started our 1 year anniversary is actually tomorrow. So for 1 year now, we've been doing these Evolution Live series. A lot of them have been here from Happy Rock Farms on Main Street in Kansas City. And MCIA is one of our biggest sponsors, longest running show sponsors, that is. And we've had all kinds of talent across the state, educators, growers, nurses, doctors, all kinds of not even local but national content. And we thought, what better way tonight to celebrate our 1-year anniversary than to bring on the original pioneers in education from Oaksterdam University. So before we pitch it over to them and bring them on, I want to just give a quick thank you to our sponsors. From the Earth was last month, so we appreciate your sponsorship last month, From the Earth. But this month is Cocoa Labs, Kansas City Cannabis Company. We have some great shows lined up for both those groups. Next week on April 15th, we'll be doing a live broadcast from our very first manufacturing facility, and that is Cocoa Labs. We're going to be kind of walking through some of their processes, showing you behind the scenes on a lot of their equipment, extraction processes, giving you some insight on some of the products that they're rolling out. And if you've seen Big V's little sneak peek on his post, by the way, we love Big V and Zach and those guys. There's some big announcements coming out from Cocoa Labs and Kansas City Cannabis Company on a very patient-oriented product and service that they're rolling out. So make sure to tune in next week with their show. Thanks Cocoa Labs and Kansas City Cannabis Company for sponsoring the show. We'll also be doing a live show from their grand opening, Kansas City Cannabis Company's grand opening in Blue Springs on 4/20. We're going to be going live from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock, bringing on some of a lot of the influencers in the industry, a lot of the like Cannabis Care Team, Leah Carr, Todd Scatini, a lot of the advocates that have really helped Missouri pave the way for this industry and who continue to be a part of the industry as well. So thank you to our show sponsors there. Thanks to Happy Rock Farms for letting us do the show from here again. Big time thank you. Thanks to the staff that's helping out. James Thomas with Level Up AV, Cat King Films behind the camera there. And then of course back to MCIA. Thank you so much for being our longest show sponsor. You guys have brought in some amazing talent. Just like tonight, we're bringing in, well, I want to let you introduce our guest. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Well, I think I might. First of all, I'm Eric McSwain. Been your host a few times. It's good to have everybody back listening in to another episode. We like to bring it to you. We like to keep it real. At the heart of our association is education. Helping folks understand about the industry, goings on in the industry, treatment of patients. We have a caregiver certification program where we help get caregivers up to speed so that they can help patients as a part of Missouri's overall program. We really love doing it, and that's why we're here. Clay and all the talent that we have here in the studio, Happy Rock Farm studio, it appears. That's important to us, and it's also important to have quality guests. And I know at the end of the day, Oaksterdam University has specialized in education. That's been sort of the core mission since the very beginning. We'll tease real quick before we get to Dale. Hopefully this summer we're going to have some universities, some accredited universities or colleges here in the state who are starting to offer those sort of programs. We've poked the bears, and hopefully they'll wake up and come join us someday. But Dale was ready to sit down and have a chat with us tonight. Dale Sky Jones, it's great to have you this evening. How are you?
Oh, hang on one
I
second.
love it.
There we go.
Perfect. I love it. And I understand you flew all the way in from California to Zoom with us tonight, right? I got nothing. I love it. Yeah, it's true. I'm known for those, but I save people most of the time. I miss swimming in the ocean. You've been out there a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, yep. I was in Oakland for a while. That's actually how I met Jeff, Dell's husband. I was in construction out there, and through one of our projects, Jeff and Dell, and got introduced to the university. I actually was living in a RV in the streets of San Francisco, taking the BART from San Francisco to Oakland, and my BART drop-off was right next to Oaksterdam University, and I would walk by there and then walk all the way to my office where my construction job was at. And every day I walked right by Oaksterdam, and then it wasn't until like many months later that I just happened to meet Jeff, who's Dell's husband. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Small world. I've got stories like that too, and I guess that's a reminder for us all. I mean, this is a small industry, not to mention a small world, and so, I think the more that we can communicate with one another and try to accomplish our goals, I think we're all headed towards the same thing. All our hearts are in the same place.
Sure.
Which is a powerful message. But anyway, Dale, I mean, what I want to know is, when did Oaksterdam get started? How did you get into this? What's your history? I mean, tell me a story here. What do we know?
It's quite a story to tell. And
got time.
In fact, someday I hear there's going to be a documentary about it. But there's it really all started, my husband, Jeff Jones, who you mentioned, Clayton, and it's remarkable to think how far back that was. It was before any of us knew what was going to happen in Missouri, as a matter of fact, when I first met you and spent the day. Actually, we wound up on a tour together of the Bay Area and just got to understand, the heart that you have. And Jeff, my husband, when he was 14, he lost his dad to cancer, and it was a really painful process. He was in South Dakota. There was no access or discussion of medical cannabis, of course, at that point in time. And Jeff, as a teenager, started learning about medical marijuana and realized that it could have been used to help his dad. And in those moments where you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go? You're trying to break free and get out of, that small town that you've been growing up in. And you no longer have that gravity, that force, that your father, to anchor you to something, respectable, So just having the freedom, I think, to do whatever and do anything because of that loss and that grief, but also have that grief drive you to do more for others. And so he came out to the Bay Area and started just working with friends on education. They would set up tables at Grateful Dead concerts and on the corner of, Ashbury and Haight with, this is during the time of Mary Brownie. And Jeff was, at the feet, learning from Dennis Perone, who had the first club in California. And this young man just kept thinking, I bet I could do this, but with the city's blessing instead of, this like, we'll do what we want kind of attitude. And Dennis Perone was quite a character. He taught for us for a long time, and very just kind of in your face, I'll do what I want because it's the right thing to do. And he was actually the first to coin the concept that pissed a lot of people off, frankly. That is, all use is medical use. And it took me a few years to wrap my brain around that one. All use is medical use. And we'll come back to that later. But so Jeff went to Oakland and worked with the city and said, listen, I would like to help patients with providing medical cannabis to them. You've got all these other problems. And trust me, Oakland had a lot of problems. This was after the Loma Prieta earthquake. So most of the downtown was red tagged, meaning the earthquake made it unsafe to occupy the buildings. And so downtown itself became very unsafe to occupy after dark. And gun violence and violence against, the property damage and violence against others, the muggings, things like that. It was just, Oakland was not in a good place. And we did not have a great tax base either to improve it. So Jeff had started providing medical cannabis first on his bicycle, and then formed a cooperative, opened a building on Broadway that had been vacant, and called it a dispensary. Said, I can't call it a club because I'm not a club. I am dispensing medicine to patients. And it was a ragtag group. And, I just spent quite a bit of time going back through those old photographs. And I was struck by also how diverse this group was. That, cancer and AIDS knows no age, no color, no boundary. And the patients, or the people trying to save their family or their loved ones, were just a really diverse group of people trying to figure this out. And so here's this young man from South Dakota who planted a flag on Broadway and started dispensing medicine with the blessing of the city of Oakland. And the Fed said, what?
Not in my
What do you
house.
do
So
with that?
They said, I'm sorry, what? And there's this guy doing like press conferences about dispensing medical marijuana on Broadway with the city's blessing. And this is 1996 that he opened, 97 that the FBI finally completed their investigation. And they actually came in through falsified documents pretending to be a patient. And in a weird twist of events, Jeff caught him in the elevator. And for about a minute and a half, it turned into potentially kidnapping a federal officer. But he's like, you need to let him go now. So he let him go, but not before he snapped a couple photographs. And they shut him down. They took the keys and put on the padlock, and that was the first raid. That was under the Clinton administration. Went after the OCBC. This is the Oakland Cannabis Buyers Cooperative. And it was a cooperative. It was owned equally by all of the patients that Jeff was helping. And so it went to court, first to the Ninth Circuit, and they won. The OCBC won the right to dispense medical cannabis in America, and it was legal for about 6 weeks. Sometime in 1997, for a month and a half, it was legal for Jeff Jones to dispense medical marijuana. And so, and I have a picture of that too, by the way, of him handing a bag to the woman that actually became the recipient of our student garden. Anyway, so as you can imagine, the federal government was just simply not okay with losing, and immediately took the case up to the Supreme Court. And Jeff, along with several other people, Dennis Perone included, they were actually all lumped into the same case, but Jeff became the face of that case, and went to SCOTUS, to the Supreme Court, to fight for the right to dispense necessity medicine. And they lost badly, like 8-0 lost. It wasn't 9-0 because one of the judges on the Supreme Court was the brother of the judge that was his judge in the Ninth Circuit, Judge Breyer, two Judge Breyers. And so a few years later, one of his patients, Angel Rach, went. She said, well, if he can't dispense to me, then can I supply my own medical cannabis? And she lost 5-4. And I bring up the Rach case, the second of the Supreme Court cases that went, because she lost over the Commerce Clause, which matters these days. The Interstate Commerce Clause is what the Supreme Court pointed to, saying, well, if you grow your own cannabis, even if it's for medical purposes, then that means that you're not purchasing cannabis from the illicit market. And cannabis purchased on the illicit market affects interstate commerce. Are you still with me? Because the grip is getting tenuous now. Like we're talking down the road around the bend. and down a rabbit hole, to take an illicit substance and say that you cannot grow your own medicine as a patient, have it supplied to you as a patient, because the illegal drug dealers in another state might somehow be affected by it, and how much money they can spend on other legal products. Like it's out there. But it also, in a fun piece of trivia, it's also what kept Obamacare in place when the Supreme Court ruled on Obamacare. It pointed to the Raich case, interstate commerce, to uphold it. I know.
Wow.
It's phenomenal how this stuff is interconnected in politics and law. So when he was stopped, he had a grower who was in Texas and running a hemp store, a legal hemp store, generally being a thorn in the side of, the local politicians and cops. But he kept the medicine, the prices low for the OCBC. And he wound up, Jeff finally talked Richard Lee into moving to Oakland, because every time he got a box in the mail, he freaked out that he was going to get arrested for getting mailed a box of cannabis. So Richard Lee took over when Jeff was stopped. And Richard had spent a lot of time overseas and really liked the coffee shop model. He wanted the Oaksterdam, casual, come in, talk with your friends, have safe place to consume, and have a cup of coffee or play a game of pool. He believed in that dual use. For a while, we had a museum attached to the dispensary. So he started SR 71 after the OCBC was shut down, and he got that permitted. SR 71 had to disappear and became the blue sky, because Lockheed Martin did not appreciate the stealth bomber reference, apparently. So we kept Seymour Skunk, but we lost the SR 71. I say we, this was slightly before my time, because I came in with the blue sky when he renamed the dispensary. Blue Sky was also the same year that Oaksterdam University was officially founded. And Jeff Jones had switched over to education when he was prevented from dispensing cannabis. And he started issuing ID cards to his patients so that when they were pulled over by the cops, there's a 1-800 number. And when I first started dating Jeff, like 4 a.m, 2 a.m, midnight on a Sunday, yes, officer, yes. And he would just talk the officer down of how this was a qualified medical cannabis patient, and that the officer could use their discretion to let that patient go. And that it's okay that he has 2 different containers, because patients sometimes use different types of medicine. And no, it's not going to be in a labeled bottle, because those didn't exist yet. Yeah. It is not intent to sell. And so he became the liaison between law enforcement and the patient population. He became the place that folks pointed to say, yeah, I don't know, just go ask Jeff Jones at the OCBC, or go ask Richard Lee now at Oaksterdam. And Oaksterdam was coined from that Amsterdam, Oakland reference of the first 2 cities to legalize. And so Richard started the school officially in 2007. He had already been running the dispensary and had a nursery and a gift shop for a while. And folks just kept asking, hey, will you teach me how to grow? Will you teach me how to grow? Hey, will you teach me how to grow? Hey, will you show me how to grow? And so Richard's like, well, I'll show you how to grow, but you need to show up to city council, because I'm trying to decriminalize. I'm trying to change Oakland's law so that we are the lowest law enforcement priority. I want getting caught with marijuana to be lower than jaywalking. And so they wrote that law, but they needed people to show up at city council. They needed people to show up to vote for these types of laws to ever take effect. And so it became a quid pro quo of, yeah, I'll teach you how to grow, but first you got to show it to city council and talk about this law.
Imagine if that was the case here.
They don't have a city hall big enough.
I know, right? Everybody wants to learn how to grow right now.
Time is different.
If we would have known that about a couple years ago before it was all legal, then every single patient caregiver would be like, all right, here's the deal. It's a part of your contracts, right? I'm going to help grow for you or teach you how to grow, but you got to show up at city council. That's I love it. That's awesome.
You got to show up to advocate for yourself and us and what we're doing. And it worked to a certain degree, but then we also realized, oh hell, we need to actually teach them like why they're showing up, how to talk once they're there, because it's also what you're advocating for. And so Richard in 2007 put an ad in the paper before he wrote a single class and said, Oaksterdam University, come in and we'll teach you horticulture, legal, politics, and history. And the whole idea was the prerequisites, the politics and the history would help you understand why we're here and then thus how to get out of it. And the legal, we wanted to make sure, well, frankly, that we taught you what not to do before we taught you what to do. Oaksterdam was really founded on this concept of, like, we know what you want to know. We're going to first teach you what you need to know. That this is about mitigating your risk. And if you start growing cannabis without understanding that you could lose your family, your freedom, your very life because of growing this plant, well, God damn it, we better tell you that first, right?
Yeah.
So it really started that way of we need to help you understand how to mitigate your risk, set up for success, prepare for the worst, and most importantly, have successful law enforcement encounters if you get caught with that cannabis, growing it, consuming it, carrying it. And so that really was the first classes was politics and history, legal, and civics, which is successful law enforcement encounters, the kind you go home at night. And then we had a horticulture class.
Nice.
And it worked. And it was wildly popular. And folks started getting civically engaged and not just showing up to city council, but showing up to the county, showing up across the pond, showing across the bay rather, showing up to other city councils as well. And what we thought was just going to be a one-off class quickly became, well, let's do it in LA. Oh, well, let's do it in Michigan. Because there's people all over that need to know these same things. Successful law enforcement encounters, the Constitution. Yeah. No joke.
Yeah.
This is how close by it is for me. This is for all of us. The Constitution, it doesn't matter. You don't even actually have to be a citizen of the United States. You can be here on holiday. You can be in the border of the United States, and the Constitution applies to you. And so understanding your rights, understanding search and seizure, understanding self-incrimination, understanding free speech, which is what we are as a school, is just simply free speech. That if you apply your rights, you're more likely to be successful, not only in being just free, but also in being a successful medical cannabis patient. And so it really just started with education, and we thought it was only going to be a couple of classes, but it kept growing, and what people wanted to know kept expanding. And over the years, the nature of who our students were changed. At first, it was predominantly patients, people that wanted to grow their own medicine, or that wanted to find safe access to medicine, find a caregiver. A lot of folks, connected over that. But then they also saw dispensaries like Richard's, and they're like, yeah, I can do that. So we started adding additional classes and courses around business and bud tending, help understand the process of not just, distribution, but intake. If you've got a bunch of patient growers, you need someone in there on procurement, making sure that cannabis is bug-free and pesticide-free and mold-free and safe to consume, and also something that a patient would want. And so we just kept adding classes. and it turned into just patients to entrepreneurs. And then, well, entrepreneurs can't do it alone. So we started training the customer service. We just started calling them bud tenders again. But I kind of had a thing where I wasn't going to call them bud tenders until it was legal.
You can't get away from it.
Then it's patient.
You can't get away from it at all. I mean,
No.
call them whatever
well, that's
you
our
want.
fault too.
But
We kind of coined the name bud tender years ago, and it wasn't me. But you're welcome.
And it's interesting how a lot of these same, because a lot of these classes you're mentioning are very similar type things, shows that we've had. We've had a local, Joni Harshman. She hands out these little things. They were even printed in our magazine to where you can cut it out and fold it. And it's like, what do you do during a traffic stop? Well, a lot of these ideas came from y'all's experience because you dealt with it first. And by the way, I want to mention this because I think we're giving away some really amazing gifts tonight. If you want a free scholarship to Oaksterdam University, and we'll continue to talk about those classes and courses, but we're giving away a free scholarship to Oaksterdam, and it's all about who tags the most people and brings the most people into this conversation. I meant to mention that earlier. So, but it's nice that it's now after you got a chance to give our viewers a chance to hear about how this all started, where you're at now, and how this course has started. So tag a friend. We're also giving away $100 off of certain courses. Just type in EVO 100 on that, and then tag a friend for the scholarship. We're also giving away 2 free gift cards to Kansas City Cannabis Company, who just recently opened up. So lots of prizes to give away. Tag friends, bring them into this conversation, because we have Del Jones here, who was a part of the original fight for freedom for access to cannabis, and who started the very first courses and curriculum, and sort of paved the way for a lot of the local educators that we have here to look to see how did they do it, and how can we kind of replicate that or put our own spin on it, or whatever the case is. We always learn from the people who went through it before us, right?
Yep. No, I dig that. And, so if I wasn't sitting here, I might want a scholarship. I mean, heck, I'm all about education. I own professional certifications, and I say own them because I earned them, and now I'm going to keep them, because a lot of times you got to keep those things up, right? So I'm vested in that sort of thing. But if I were to get a scholarship, okay, because I tagged all these friends and they came to watch the show, what does that mean? What do I get? Is that just a class, or?
Well, we can certainly jump in and talk about some of the classes. We have 2 types of programs. So for now, I'll keep it simple and just say that the 3 certification programs that are asynchronous, we have 4 certification programs. So this, you could apply this to any of the asynchronous certification programs. We have a business of cannabis, which just helps you understand the overview, and is also really fantastic if you're a professional trying to understand either how to get into the industry or how to relate to the industry as a professional in your industry. So real estate agents or CPAs, things along those lines. We just launched a new extraction and manufacturing course, and that's for commercial manufacturing extraction. We, of course, have our world famous commercial horticulture program, and we recently launched a bud tending program, which does get rather scientific. Both that and the extractions program do get into some hardcore science and dosing and things that are really helpful, but both start at a very basic level. So you can come in on an entry level, and then we'll just step up the information as you get further and further in. So the scholarship is Oaksterdam's gift to Evolution Magazine's, tonight's watchers, whoever brings in the most additional guests. But we also just wanted to thank you to all of your watchers and listeners, so that $100 off $100 off any program you can use until the end of May. So not just the end of April, but actually all the way through the end of May. So you happen to be watching this on record or rerun, then you can check that calendar. We'll keep it live through then.
Is it fair to say then that you teach both online and in-person classes? I mean, is there a choice? Looks like there might be live classrooms, self-paced courses,
Did
right?
for many, many years. We were the only to have a campus that you could come hands-on. With COVID and the shutdowns that were required, especially considering students were in a building side by side for 8 hours a day, we took our entire program to synchronous live classes now. So we have a Zoom environment where the teacher and the students interact. We cap the class no more than 35. We go on tours with the students. The horticulture program can, bring their camera into their grow and get feedback. But for the most part, it's 2.5 hours once a week for 15 weeks, just shy of 15 weeks, plus a capstone project where you work on building a light business plan with a cohort. So there's quite a few extracurricular activities in addition to the classroom time on the synchronous program. That one is quite a bit more intensive, where you can take the same learning outcomes in the self-paced online, where you basically just have 6 months to take it at your leisure on your own time.
Got it. Makes sense. And I've taken a few of those, and my studies got interrupted before I got to your coursework. I've done a few others, and in fact, for our caregiver program, we've done something similar, although we took a different approach. Instead of necessarily providing the education, we decided that for our certification, we would just test for knowledge, do that formative test to make sure people that understood, because we recognize too that at least in terms of our certifications, we were going to have folks coming to get the certification that already knew. They didn't need those courses, that coursework, and additionally, as an industry association, it makes things a little different too. We wanted to create opportunities, and so now there's space for educators to teach courses that prepare people for the certification exam, that sort of thing. So I really dig that. Have you had good success with your, part of the topic of the show is preparing for a cannabis career. I mean, it sounds like you've got some curriculum, some things for that. Do you have a good placement rate that you can share? What can you tell us?
Well, you've brought up a lot of important points there, and I do agree with you. I think education, it needs to be ubiquitous, and I often have folks ask me, how do you feel about all the schools that have popped up, teaching similar programs, or the universities that are trying to. There's quite a few limitations on how much the accredited universities are allowed to teach, because they usually take federal dollars. So there's a pretty thick line on what they can really talk about. But the long and short of it is, our doctors need to be taught the endocannabinoid system. Our plant scientists need to understand how and be able to speak to, for instance, how hemp can actually help us reclaim our lands. And that, years ago, we didn't let our fields lie fallow as an empty on that 7th year. We planted hemp and just get back to the basics of what our agronomists and what our doctors and physicians, our nurses knew 100 years ago, and what has been stripped out of all of our universities and colleges. We were the only ones teaching about the endocannabinoid system. We, of course, added a science class pretty quickly to the beginning of the curriculum to talk about not just the endocannabinoid system, but the research that has already happened throughout the world on how cannabis affects not just the human body, but mammals generally, whether it's you or your pet, so that you understand the difference between consuming cannabis by inhaling it or by eating it. And that, yes, your liver does convert cannabinoids, THC specifically, to a more psychoactive version, 11-hydroxy-THC, rather than the delta-9 THC that tends to dissipate quickly. And so there's drug interactions to concern yourself with that. I don't think that cannabis is so much the problem, but a lot of folks that throw their pills away not taking that prescription could kill you. And having a doctor's supervision, even CBD. I get concerned about any prescription that has avoid grapefruit on the label. You probably want to avoid CBD in that same amount of time for similar reasons, because CBD can be an off switch to some things that might inhibit the uptake of your medicine. So there's an entirety of knowledge that needs to get out far and wide. Unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that think they know because of what they have been told, and the source of information is often questionable. Even in some of these renowned universities, I've been slightly disappointed at some of the information that's come out.
Wait a minute. You know, bro science is never wrong.
Bro science is never wrong. Right. Yeah. And that's part of the trouble is, if you look at the war on drugs and, the pristine white egg, this is your brain, crack, sizzle, this is your brain on drugs.
Yummy.
The gateway marketing around marijuana was hands down the best marketing campaign ever. Yeah. It was the most effective. And it still stays with us to this day, when in fact, cannabis is the exit strategy to a lot of these societal ills, including opiate and opioid dependencies. We made this plant illegal. It's a relatively safe plant with high medicinal value. And because it stays in our system longer, we also pushed folks towards harder, more dangerous drugs, whether it's medicinally or street drugs, where the effective dose is dangerously close to the lethal dose. And that's just not the case with cannabis. Trust me, I know a lot of those bros that have tried to overdose on cannabis and can't. But, I want to go back a little bit, because one of the things that you also touched on before we jump full into some of the classes and courses is, convincing folks to make that change is really difficult, and you have to show them that it is worth it and that they can do it. And it was in 2010 that we did the first statewide campaign and put this thing on a ballot and said, let's change this law. Republicans, you should agree, because we're wasting our resources. This is a personal freedom decision. This is a state's right to do so. Dems, let's decarcerate. This is affecting people of color. We could be buying books instead of guns, that there's something for everyone. And we were in the middle of the worst economic downturn in 2009, where we could say, hey, what if we taxed it? And so, having that conversation where first they think you're crazy and then they laugh at you. And then all of a sudden they're doing it too, is largely where we've come. Just being, schlepping up and down the state, schlepping around the country, trying to talk about the why and the who, that it's not this scary drug dealer in the corner. It's your brother, it's your mother, it's your cousin who needs this as medicine, and we can take simply a different approach. I know for our trouble, we got raided by the Obama administration. That was our second raid, if anybody's counting. So the Obama administration came in 9 years ago this week. It was, or last week, it was April 2nd of 2012. And they took everything but the office furniture. And so that is actually when I took over Oaksterdam personally. Our founder was forcibly retired, and I knew that we couldn't let the school die. The education was too important. And part of the point of the raid was to kill the school, was to throw an ice bath on the industry of, you can't even talk about this and expect to survive. They had 2 ballots, one in Colorado and one in Washington, and the Fed wanted to make damn sure that we scared the hell out of those voters, and that Oaksterdam leaders couldn't possibly help coming off of an almost successful blueprint in 2010. And so, fast forward, watching state by state, it's really been a matter of teaching individuals how to navigate in the gray area. that at any given moment you have, one place that is trying to regulate and has rules, and maybe it's state rules or local rules, but it's only for medical. And we still need to protect parents and adults who choose cannabis over, a bud over a beer. A veteran who chooses cannabis for traumatic brain injury or PTSD, phantom limb pain. It's very effective on the type of pain that opiates don't speak to. They literally don't. The receptors don't speak to the pain, and yet cannabis does seem to relieve that pain. And so the other thing that we've taught all along is advocacy. How to talk about your choice, your medicine, your business, because we're all still in it as a movement. We can't really truly be an industry until we change the federal law.
And that's important to me too, because advocacy it's a key. It forces the conversation, right? And here we are in Missouri. Our neighbors are in Kansas. We just had a show with some Kansas advocates here very recently, and they're sort of on that opposite end, right? They are where you were back in 98, 99, right? So yeah, we've seen all this, so it's going to normalize faster for us, but we just need to talk about it. And me I'm from small town, central Midwest, we got as many cows as people, that sort of thing. And, whenever I first started talking about it around town, and I was a school board member, it was like, whoosh, and look around and over your shoulder and the whole deal. And now I've got my local farm bureaus actively talking about, hemp and, some of their farmers and that sort of thing. So really the progression, I think, is accelerated. We're lucky for that. We're happy that there's been some groundbreaking, because it's a lot easier that way. And, having that history of, trying to do the right thing. Because I think that's what you're talking about, in terms of Oaksterdam's core mission, of education. That's really about, bringing it to the people and trying to make that statement. But it sounds like you've had some pretty rough times as well. Has there been anything else crazy since 2012? That like really rattled?
Fire, COVID.
Yeah, honestly, the four agency federal raid is pretty rattling, and it took. I'm pretty sure I woke up with that fear, that fear in your heart when you wake up with a scream, thinking you're like falling off a cliff, probably every morning for 2 years after that. What scared me the most was I had a child. And when we first started, when I became the spokeswoman for the campaign, I had nothing to lose. It was just me. And I believed so strongly in it. And then during the course of the campaign, I became pregnant, and suddenly I'm a pregnant woman talking about legalizing pot. And I just kept thinking, gosh, what's going to happen after the campaign? Clearly they're paying attention. And after the raid, it really, I was in fear for my family. I found out later that they did in fact threaten the founder with arresting us and charging us just to try to get him to talk. What was crazy about the whole thing was they were going after public corruption. It was the politicians that they were trying to figure out who was doing nefarious stuff. And we just weren't involved with those types of politicians. So we can't tell you what we don't know. And we didn't pay any of them off because we're fucking broke. We put all our money into this campaign over here. And meanwhile, Richard Lee, it was an IRS raid. They thought that he was Walter White burying barrels of cash in the backyard. And really he was a dude in a wheelchair driving like a 1996 Bonneville, living in an apartment. It just wasn't what they thought it was. Since then, it was really trying to get legalization back off the ground that became the most crazy. I realized that what we needed to do better. California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole because of the activists here in California.
You guys
kind
are
of a circular firing squad.
Okay. Crazy.
Yeah, it's the same. Unfortunately, that's one thing that hasn't seemed to rectified across the country is the activists are often hi. My 10-year-old just walked in. The one that was in my arms for the federal raid. Yeah. That would be Jackson. I have a son, Jesse. If you notice the trend, I did that on purpose. Jesse and Jackson, homage to
I love it.
civil rights leader. Yeah, and that really, that's the whole point. This was never about legalizing pot. This was always about the most important civil rights revolution of our time. And we have this amazing ability to change how we do so many things in this country. If only we end the drug war. We can win the drug war by ending the drug war and stop criminalizing people, stop spending
Right.
$500,000 a year to keep them in prison, and start investing in early education. There's just so many things that
And
we can do
educational
better.
programs in
And it
general.
always seemed to come back to prohibition. That this stupid thing is how we ensconced the Jim Crow laws into for-profit prison systems.
Right.
And I want to make sure that we don't do this in our regulatory regimes, that we have a chance to change the federal law, to deschedule in a way that lets small businesses in, that lets veterans participate, people of color, women, because it's small businesses that, frankly, it's where we survive and thrive. And as long as this is only legal for a few, a monopoly, the rest of us are either employees or outlaws.
Right.
And that's one thing I think Missouri did right.
Yeah, well, and let me get a prediction, right? Because I think I've got my own prediction about when federal, I wouldn't say legalization, but when the first federal laws are really going to start to happen that are meaningful for the industry. I think we're getting pretty close to that. What do you think? Can you put a year on it? Is it going to happen this year? Is it going to happen 3 years from now? What do you think? Go on record. Give us a prediction.
My crystal ball is
Come
fuzzy.
on.
Yeah.
Shake a Magic 8 Ball.
I think there's probably going to be like a two-step and maybe a do-si-do. The one thing that I can't forget is it's always one step forward, two steps back. So I can't imagine that the federal situation will be much different from that. The other thing that I've noticed is there's a pattern, and the pattern flows with elections. And so if you look at when all the raids happen, and then you look what time of year it is, and then you look to see if it's a midterm election or an off-year election, you start to see the pattern over and over the years. So I see potentially something like the Safe Banking Act and potentially a 280E reform before I see full descheduling. And that I know that would be of great relief to business. 280E and safe banking would both be a tremendous relief. But I also fear that if it's done in a half measure, that continues to screw the little guy. We can't, again, only make banking legal for the rich, or the MSOs. It's got to be legal for the small businesses in small towns too. And so it's how it's done. I think that it's the who and the how are allowed to participate. I think with the Senate in the shape that it's in, if we don't get it done in the next 2 years, it could get punted. I've heard a lot of people say 3 years, but by my math, we're not going to hold the Senate with the Dems in 3 years, and there ain't no way in God's green earth that McConnell is going to let this out of committee. He hasn't so far, and we had that chance. So anyone that has illusions about that, This isn't a Dem or a Republican issue. This is a who's going to get it out of committee issue. And when the Republicans are in charge, Lindsey Graham runs that committee, and he will not let it out of committee either. So between Carolina and Kentucky, that's who's got their hand on the throat of both hemp and cannabis policy reform when the Republicans are in charge. Now the Dems are in charge. So our problem is Biden. Oh, yes, you heard me right. Yep. It's You're Biden. Right. You're right. He does not believe in legalization.
You're right.
And he believes in a softer, gentler prohibition. And if I may, this is actually what I'm most worried about, is just moving the line a little bit, keeping it illegal, keeping it scheduled, and keeping it only for those monopolies, and everybody else that gets caught with it. Well, you have a choice, jail or treatment. And so they start forcing people into private treatment because, gosh, I don't want to go to jail. I'd pick treatment too. But I'm going to get a bill for that treatment because you heard me say it's private, right? And that bill could also send me to jail if I don't pay it. But at the end of the day, the testing facilities, because I've got to test your blood or your urine or that bag for what's in it, the testing facilities continue to focus on cannabis instead of things like rape kits or other important subjects. So you've also got just the company drug testing getting rich. And then you've got private treatment facilities getting rich, filling their beds with heads that are marijuana addicts instead of the people that actually need the beds. So it's a compounding tragedy because you've got folks that actually have opioid dependency problems that can't get in because they're making more money off of the marijuana addicts that they then point to and say, look what legalization did. Look at all these marijuana addicts. This is a problem. This is this wicked self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm trying to talk about out loud to make damn sure that we do not let this happen.
Yeah. Yep, and it's amazing too. I mean, I look at California and all I see is just pot everywhere. I mean, it's a problem. It's basically coming out of windows. You know, people are getting arrested all the time. It's murder. I mean, people are murdering over it. You know, and it's been going on for 30.
Cats are sleeping with dogs.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, look, I tell you what.
The sky fell years ago.
That's right. That's right. Take a break. Take a break.
We're still losing kids. Parents are still losing their children, whether it's in a custody battle or still in poor, disenfranchised neighborhoods. We are still taking babies off their mother's breasts over marijuana in the closet in California.
And
so
we need
not
to get our
there
friends
yet,
out of
and
jail.
that goes back to we've got to deschedule, not just federally, but state by state. We can't keep breaking up families like this. It's ridiculous.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Now, I noticed that you dodged the date question. That's fine. That's fine.
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years? Okay, I'm with you. That matches.
Like if we don't do it in 2 years, I'm really freaking. I agree. It's like now or never, if you will.
That's true. But I think we're going to take a break. Okay.
Yep.
Give everybody a little bathroom break. We've also got some updates Clay's going to tell us about. Now, when we come back, though, I've got some questions, and I think our viewers have some questions. We need to talk about it. You guys, this is your first trip to Missouri, even virtual. And there are folks who just have questions and, either clear the air or, whatever. But let's talk about elephants when we come back. How about that?
And before we go to the commercial break, thank you for sharing your history. It's an amazing history. I think a lot of people are unaware of that history too, especially here in Missouri. So it's an honor for us to be in your presence with the amount of things that you've done and been through to bring us the entire industry, not just what happened with you there in California, but that was the domino effect that helped us to get to where we're at right now. So thank you for telling us about that. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to check in with the Canna Convict Project. Perfect timing with where we were going with the subject there with incarceration and how we can hopefully all these things working together from people who have started originally to where we're at now. If the biggest thing is how can we stop some of these bigger effects of the war on drugs that are continuing to happen, and the Cannabis Project is all over that. So I'm about to pitch it to them, but before we go to them, tag a friend, scholarship. You can win a scholarship tonight to Oaksterdam University. You can win $100 off the courses. You can win 2 free gift cards to Kansas City Cannabis Company. Tag a friend to win any of those things. We're going to take a little break. Ask any questions. We're going to start popping those questions up on the screen for us to ask Dell in the second half. Let's check out and see what's going on with Chris and Christina at the Cannabis Project.
Hey guys, Chris and Christina with the Cannabis Project. Hope you're enjoying the show. We've got a couple short updates for you this evening.
So we want to start out by saying thank you to the community, a gigantic thank you to the community for all of the support that you guys have given to our POWs by sending these letters or signing up on these letters that we have produced in support of their pending clemency here in Missouri. The turnout has been great, and we're so grateful for you guys for doing that. This is something we will be doing continuously at events in the future and just bombarding the governor's office with these letters, and hopefully they can get released on clemency amongst all of the others that have been receiving such privileges lately.
From the last 2 events alone, we were able to get over 500 signatures and letters sent in to the governor and his chief legal counsel. So thank you so much, community. You guys did a fantastic job. Keep helping us out.
So Robert and Trevor, who the letters are for, we are currently working on a furlough request for Trevor, whose grandparents are in hospice and dying. So we're trying to get him released for a little bit of time so he can spend his final moments with them. And he would be released for 30 days if it was granted, and then have to turn himself back into custody thereafter. So wish us luck on that so he can spend that time with his family.
If you guys aren't aware of who Trevor is, you can look on the page 26 of this month's Evolution magazine. Christina has written an article about him in there, so check it out. It's on the 420 issue, so page 26.
Next, we want to talk real briefly. We had mentioned last week about the declaratory judgment that had been filed for addressing the probation and parole issue here in Missouri. So we have been working diligently on that, trying to seek out other legal support to back our attorneys and give additional insights and just whatever they can do to help us. So we're working on that, and we'll keep you guys posted. We're really excited about it, and hopefully we can get a positive outcome for those who are serving time on supervision here in Missouri.
Oh, and please support the MORE Act. On a federal level, if we can get the MORE Act passed, we're going to create so much freedom for so many nonviolent prisoners that, reach out to Chuck Schumer and Cory Booker and everybody else that's working on that. We really need to support that and get that passed through.
And next, we are just going to kind of end on this note. There is a gentleman out there named Seth Ferranti, who is a former POW himself of the war on drugs. And he has a documentary on Netflix right now called White Boy. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It is such a wonderful collaboration that he has put together. He wrote it and produced it and directed it. And it really goes over the abuse of those in power, how greatly they can abuse their power on you, how greatly the media can manipulate a situation and victimize people. And I have had so many emotions. I've watched it twice. I encourage everyone to see it. Again, that's White Boy by Seth Ferranti on Netflix.
You did a phenomenal job, Seth. Great job. I really hope that it continues with its success. I believe it's either number 6 or number 10 right now on Netflix. Let's keep showing our support for that and showing our support for him and help him further his advocacy.
And that's about all we have for you guys today. I know you're getting a bunch of...
The Missouri Cannabis Industry Association has been our longest-running show sponsor, while providing quality education over many topics in partnership with area cannabis professionals. MCIA is dedicated to a free cannabis market to create supplies and prices that are patient-friendly, with initiatives to support adult-use cannabis, to protect home growers' rights, and expand the caregiving program. Go to mocia.org to learn about memberships, to learn about their certified caregiving program, and learn how to get involved. Thank you, MCIA, for being a show sponsor. Welcome to Coco Labs. The Coco Labs team is very excited and grateful to be a part of the emerging Missouri medical cannabis industry, providing the industry with high-quality concentrates, vapor products, RSO, and edibles. With a limited number of products rolling out this April, they will continue to build their product line throughout the year. Check them out online at cocolabsco.com to learn more about the products they offer. The Coco Labs team would like to thank everyone for this amazing opportunity to serve you. Kansas City Cannabis Company, redefining the approach to improving the quality of life of its community by investing in an extensive educational program for staff and patients alike. With a curated and thoroughly tested menu of premium products, Kansas City Cannabis Company is setting the bar for product knowledge and variety while offering a patient experience unmatched in the industry. With a wide range of discounts, incentives, and access to affordable medicine guarantees Kansas City Cannabis Company will meet the needs of every patient and leave a lasting impression you won't soon forget. Join in the grand opening celebration along with the Evolution Live series, product vendors, DJs, food trucks, prize bags, and more on 420 in Blue Springs. Kansas City Cannabis Company, the grand opening.
Hey, welcome back to the Evolution Live series. This is our 1 year anniversary, and what better way to celebrate that than to take a look back and see, how did we get here? How did Missouri get here? How did, who paved the way for all this? Who were the pioneers? And we're very lucky to have our guest here that's on the show tonight, Dell Jones. But before she comes back on, real quick reminder, scholarship on the line tonight. Tag a friend. Whoever tags the most people and brings them into this conversation, we will award them to the scholarship to Oaksterdam University. We're giving off $100 off certain courses. We'll give away those prizes as well as 2 free gift cards to Kansas City Cannabis Company, who just opened up, had their soft opening. We're going to have their grand opening on the 20th. We're doing a whole live broadcast from there, as well as a live broadcast from Coco Labs on the 15th coming up. So welcome back from the commercial break. I'm going to pitch it over. We have Dell back here with us, and of course Eric McSwain with MCIA.
Hey. I am super happy too. I mean, I counted it up the other night. I think we've done like 16 or 18 hours of live broadcast.
With just me. The MCIA.
That's just me. And that is way too much of this face on video. But apart from that, I hope glad you guys are still hanging in there, because I don't wish that on anybody. But we're here tonight with Dale Sky Jones with Oaksterdam University, hollering at us out of California. And here in the second half of the show, I wanted to get into a subject that's a little more difficult, right? It feels a little bit more difficult. As you probably know, Dale, here in Missouri, we've had what feels like a really rocky start out of the gate with our program. We had limited licenses, which just is always tough in general. And then as a part of those limited licenses, and by the way, all truth, transparency here, I'm a denied applicant, okay? I didn't make the cut, I didn't get my licenses. So I got questions too, but, and I've read the articles, I've read the newspaper articles, I know it's been said, but I kind of wanted to hear some of these things from you. And so here in Missouri, as a part of trying to vie for those 393 licenses, you had to fill out an application, some ridiculous number of questions. I think I filled a 5-inch ring binder with all my responses from my application. And as it turns out, an organization you're affiliated with had to go through all of those huge amounts of binders and questions and score it and all that stuff. And, it's been contentious, and I think these sort of situations always are, right? There's going to be contention. For me, I threw everything financially, emotionally into the process. And so anytime you've got that happening, tempers are going to get high, emotions are going to get high. And so I talked to you previously. We haven't scripted any of this, by the way, but we did talk previously and said, you know what, in the last couple of days we've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of folks here in our local area who really want to know more about that. So anyway, let's talk about the elephant for a minute. So tell me about Oaksterdam and how they're related with Wise Health and just sort of the whole timeline, how everything went down. Just tell me how it shook out.
Well, I think a lot of and thank you. I should start with thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to some of these concerns, because I think if I were in the shoes of someone who had put as much time and energy and money and resources and hope and dreams into an application process, it's devastating. And I can relate to that. I can relate to that feeling. I too have gone for, I don't hold a license. In fact, Oaksterdam, one of the key things that differentiates us from just about any other school I've noticed out there is we will have nothing to do with the back end. We teach for the lowest price possible. We do a lot of scholarships, and then we go let you be the best you can be, meaning I'm not a consultant that will take a piece of your back end, and never have been and never will. We are simply educators. But that said, I also go after RFPs, requests for proposals to, sometimes it's education. For instance, Oaksterdam is blessed to be recently this past, it took me a year and a half to get there, but we are now authorized social equity educators for workforce development and business development for the largest city in the world, regulating for social equity, Los Angeles, as well as authorized social equity educators for the city of San Francisco. And those were both very competitive. Like I said, LA, year and a half ago, I started applying for LA, and I still don't actually know what my job's going to be yet. And so that's, hundreds of pages of proposals and money and time and investment and energy and hopes and dreams. And so I just wanted to commiserate with you, because I don't always win those bids. And it's really crushing when you put your heart and soul. And it's not even about whether or not you would have been good. It's the sheer number of competitors. And it turns into a numbers game of competition. And that's largely what I saw happen in Missouri. I think there were something like 600 tops were anticipated to apply for these licenses. And instead over 2,200, I believe, wound up actually applying. Missouri set up a really open, lovely process to try to allow small business and to try to allow participation from community-based businesses. And it just seemed to become, like, it reminds me, do you remember the old cartoons and, you're on the deserted island and there's like a mirage of a drumstick? That's what Missouri turned into for the rest of the country, was just this like juicy drumstick, and everybody wanted to come take their bite. And so I first came to Missouri, actually, I mentioned at the top of the show that I met Clayton before I was just like, oh, cool, Missouri's moving, right on. I'm running my school, I'm doing my thing. I'm paying attention insofar as I care anytime a state starts to move. But it was really when Roz McCarthy, who runs Minorities for Medical Marijuana, contacted, I met her through a mutual friend who really just thought it important to have an educational partner for the minority marijuana boot camps, which she had already been planning to hold around the country and has since done so. But she started in Missouri. And the whole point was to try to offer up the pathway. What is this anyway? For specifically minorities, women, and veterans. And the event was couched as a 4-week boot camp to help people get familiarized with what a licensing process looked like. But all this happened before the licensing process was in place. It was really just an overview of what new states tended to look like, and just how to get ready. That you've got to start figuring out your resources really early.
Yeah.
You've got to start understanding your risks really early. If you have the family homestead and 6 little kids running around, maybe you're not the one that should put the family farm up to be risked, that you've just got a lot of planning. Go ahead.
I'd like to just speak on this particular, the boot camp thing was in a few papers, local papers here and there. There's a lot of local influencers who read these news stories and think that it's absolutely the truth. But I was actually at that boot camp. This was very early on. When we just launched the magazine, and I was going to every event possible, and I was there at this boot camp, and that's when that was the first time I've actually seen you speak at an event. We had met previously before that, in my time in Oakland, and so the audience there, like you said, this was for people who really, deserve the shot. The idea was for MM. We had Roz on our show a few weeks ago, and she's very adamant about creating this place for minorities to have this, not only just have a job in the industry, but why not give them ownership, right? And so their idea of that organization is to, how can we create this opportunity for them? The whole thing with the boot camp was, well, we'll get them all together and we'll figure out who has the best plan, and then maybe we can figure out a way to find funding for the best plan. Maybe that was their idea. I'm not sure. But Dell Oaksterdam, you were just a guest speaker at this event, right? And whenever you got up there, I had already read the audience, and I could just tell that nobody in here is really gonna go for a license. I mean, these are not business owners. These are not. The majority of the conversation that Dell had with the audience was how to interact with a police officer when you get pulled over and they smell cannabis. Like, that's the audience that we were dealing with at this, and nobody at this boot camp went for licenses. None of them were even denied or even a winner of an applicant. And so the fact that these papers, and a lot of people fell for the newspapers, word of, it was very frustrating for me, because I was actually there at those events and I knew what was happening. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there on that little portion of the whole thing.
I'll take your 2 cents. You can give me a quarter.
Raise you a
yeah,
quarter.
It is frustrating, because I've read some of those newspaper reports, and they're just wildly inaccurate. And I wish that the reporters would take the time to talk to someone, even you. Don't even take my word for it. Go talk to a participant. Yeah, my particular class was federal versus state law, as in the supremacy clause versus a state trying to regulate a federally illegal substance. This was in April. So this was before the rules were made. It really was just about getting ready, because something was about to happen. And we don't know what the something is yet. So let's just talk about some general best practices, like don't get arrested on the way. And so... I'm always the let's just try to keep them out of jail chick, and that's really why I went to Missouri for that boot camp. Was, folks get so excited, and I saw it all the time just coming to Oaksterdam of like, woo, I'm in Oaksterdam, and it's legal now, I can do what I want. I'm like, no, boop, it's not legal yet. And we've got to be careful that folks get so excited that they go do something reckless, and then they lose their children, their house, their freedom, in some cases their life. And so that really was the whole point of the boot camp. I had a blast. I came out. It was the fastest trip because it was also the first time that I left my little girl, who was born just the year before, alone. For the night. So I was in and out as fast as I could, and off I went. And I genuinely thought, wow, I hope to be back soon to do some training. And let's see, I think sometime would have been mid-June. someone said, "Hey, Missouri is looking for scorers," and nobody applied. I was like, "Whoa, that's a bummer." Like, I just felt bad for Missouri. I was like, "That's really kind of sad that I hadn't even heard about it." So I didn't, like, well, they didn't advertise it very well because nobody that I knew that that was even a thing. And so my partner in Wise Health Solutions, we decided to go ahead and create a scoring company because I knew that between my friend who used to run Nevada before Nevada's problems, so he was the original chief in Nevada, and not the later one that got Nevada sued. He was the chief when it was working well. Between him and I, that we knew a lot of really good quality individuals around the country that could help with this scoring project. And so we said, well, hell, I think we could do a good job. He agreed, and we went for it. And shock, surprise, we won the RFP.
And this was
after
like, how long was this after the boot camp?
Oh, well, let's see. The boot camp was April. I was in Missouri in the first half of April, and then we would have been applying for the RFP in July.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in between is when all the rules got written, and the RFP. And the RFP I'm talking about is not for licenses. It's for the RFP for, sorry, my dad is calling because timing. Have to call him back after. Hi, Dad. The RFP for scoring.
So you
and there
applied,
were 5 companies.
You applied for that in July is when you first put out for the RFP position. And so
because the first one in June they had put out, but nobody saw it and nobody applied to it. So that first one got thrown away because nobody responded. So we responded.
Do you have any
July.
insight on why that first request was? Nobody responded to that? Was there a reason why?
I mean, I can only give you my reason is I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And I tend to hear stuff. I mean, I certainly don't know everything, but when like a state is undergoing a scoring opportunity or about to legalize in a big way, and there's about to be a bunch of applications. I mean, I guess I knew that Missouri was headed in that direction because Amendment 2 had passed, but I stopped paying attention as to how the process was going to be undertaken until I saw, they were trying to hire a third-party scorer and nobody applied. And I think we could do that because we knew we weren't going to have anything to do with any of the businesses. As I mentioned earlier, Oaksterdam doesn't work with a license. We only educate. So we have a really clear line ethically. First off, I don't want to compete with my students. I feel like it would be really weird to say, hey, come learn from me. By the way, I'm competing with you for a license in Pennsylvania. Like, that's kind of effed up.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But then the other part of it that bothers me is then it's like, what? I'm going to educate you, but I'm going to educate you better because I'm going to get into bed with you and try to make some money off of you. So then you're not getting as good of an education. Like the whole thing is just, it's not okay. So it was a decision years ago of where our rails are, that we dispense education. After that federal raid that forcibly retired our founder, who had a dispensary and a nursery and was absolutely permitted to do cannabis business, and I was over trying to run the damn school, not able to work with regulators because of the drug dealer over here. So I just wanted to be a school. Like, it was, and I'm making a crack about drug dealer because of the rate. So
sure.
I love my drug dealers. Okay. Humor. Yes. So yeah, the long and short of the RFP was just simply that I have expert practitioners at my fingertips. I have amazing individuals who know horticulture inside and out, who know security inside and out, who understand the law and what communities are looking for. But because Chad, my partner, used to be, the agency for another state, he also knew what they were looking for and had a lot of former regulators, several former police officers, former DEA agent, former expert, and several current experts. We had several PhDs, professors, and man, professors can be really tough graders. Holy shit. You don't get that one thing. And so what we did was find across the country the most diverse and expert group of scorers ever undertaken anywhere in America. Just like you had the issue in Missouri of over 2,000 people applying when you were only expecting maybe 500 or 600. We also only were, originally told 500 or 600 by such and such a date, and it wound up being 4 times as much, but the constitutional date remained the same. And so the only way to respond to that was to scale up. And so we wound up with 45 or 46 graders from all over the country, about 50% women, 40% minority, including leadership. And we plucked them from everywhere except Missouri. Because we had to do due diligence on every single grader and ensure that they were nowhere within 2 degrees of separation of any licensee or attempted applicant. We made them ask their family, their friends, look at any consulting gigs that they had. And I actually only utilized a few of our professors in Oaksterdam, but we were not allowed to talk about it on campus at Oaksterdam. So there was a silo procedure in place where these scorers graded on their own, never at Oaksterdam. I just want to make that really clear, that no scoring happened at OU. But that these scorers were checked, double checked, and triple checked for not only no improprieties, but no appearance of improprieties. Any scorer that even had a great aunt that was thinking about becoming a bud tender was removed from the team. So we just made sure that there were no conflicts of interest. We also had everyone sign a 2-year attestation that they would have nothing to do with any of the businesses in Missouri for the next 2 years. And we proceeded with a scoring team of former, I would say over 40% were former law enforcement officials in one respect or another for one agency or another. And the rest were expert practitioners or professors, many of whom were investigators or regulators in other states. So they had the benefit of seeing for years the difference between an application and reality, because they were part of the regulation, part of the licensing, and then they had to go inspect for years after the fact to understand, the DPI of the camera and whether or not you could actually catch a bad guy with that DPI and shutter speed, stuff that I don't know about. And so our graders were also bullshit detectors to a certain degree. You can throw a lot of word soup at something and it can sound good. But if it's like, yeah, but you're going to overprice your stuff and that's going to put you out of business because there's no way that you can handle that much, marketing or that much security for the size of the business that you're running. More wasn't always better. It's what was realistic. And so, yeah, we pulled together what I think is the best damn scoring team in the country, if not the world, with respect to their expertise and their professionalism, their dedication to the process. And throughout, it was about the sacred trust. This was for the citizens of Missouri, and we were entrusted with that. And so I truly believe that our graders did the best they possibly could to be fair. And it was entirely blind process. So we never knew who anybody was. The graders did not see each other's scores. So I never saw your binder. I never saw any binder. all I saw were little pieces of data, hundreds of thousands of pieces of data that we sliced and diced
Now,
with,
did you have to
various
develop
graders.
Did you have to develop your own criteria for this scoring, or were you provided some guidance from the state, or how did all that work?
Yeah, all this is a matter of public record, which is, also why I feel so comfortable talking about it. This was all prescribed by the state, the rubric. So anyone can go look any of that up. It goes question by question and what the scoring criteria was. And at that point, each grader was assigned one question, and that grader scored everything in that particular category. So you might have different graders in different categories. So that explains a lot of why, you might have a negative Nancy on the cultivation question, and you have a generous Ned in the dispensary question. So you might notice differences between the different license types for that reason. But it was a blind process. So the scorer only saw the answer to only the question they were assigned.
Yep. So can you, did you mute him for us, James? All right.
Shockingly, it was not my children that interrupted. So I'm
Well, it was adorable either way. Yeah, and I think, you started to address that, definitely some differences between the business types, right? The types of applications, but it did seem, at least some folks were pointing to, there were folks who submitted multiple applications of the same business type, and there were some complaints there as well about discrepancies between scores despite, responses that were identical. Do you have any response to that, or can you respond to that? I know there's ongoing appeals, so
yeah,
but if you can, that'd be
I
great.
can't speak to what's happening now, just simply because I'm not. The contract ended with the Department of Health and Senior Services this past summer, so we're not involved in any of the scoring processes on that end. What I can say is the graders were trained very carefully to be as consistent as possible. We also trained them about bias creep, which is, if you have to score, especially any of those teachers out there, if you have to score, if it's not an ABCD type answer, and you're scoring a paragraph or a page, or in some cases 27 pages for some of thank you. But the long and short of it is, after you read 100 of those, or in some cases 600 of those, you may have a slightly different opinion by the time you get to the 599th. And so we tried to train, we did train our graders to account for that. But at the end of the day, we're not AI, it's a human process. And what I have personally looked at since that time seems to be oftentimes the difference between a 7 and a 10, which is, basically the difference between outstanding and exceptional. What is the difference between outstanding and exceptional on a random Tuesday versus a Sunday? It's tricky. I wish that we could have built an AI to go find identical responses, but these graders didn't always see them side by side. And that's just the simple truth of it, is it was randomized. So it could have been 3 weeks in between reading two of the same answer. And it would have been hard for that scorer. But I have seen overall the level of consistency was extraordinarily high. And anytime you have that many questions and answers, and we're talking about over 2,200 applications, and each application had at least 80 questions. And those were divvied up, like I said, sliced and diced, that the overall level was extraordinarily low as far as statistical anomalies go, and in a human endeavor. And I think that, for the most part, the process was as fair as it possibly could be. And it was structured as such. And I respect, like I said at the top, the difficulty in trying really hard and second guessing every minutia. And I'm a fan of Oklahoma's model. I'm a libertarian. Let the market decide. So there's, there are additional things that we can do in policy to perhaps expand access for businesses. I certainly hope that Missouri goes legal for adults sometime soon and gives people another bite at the apple. But at the end of the day, I'm really proud of our graders. I was impressed with the professionalism and the seriousness that the staff at the state undertook legalizing medical marijuana, the care and concern that everyone involved in the project showed towards the end results being, something that the community and the citizens could believe in, and that those businesses that did get licensed were well prepared to serve their community and do so well. But that's not to say that the ones that didn't get a license couldn't have done the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And I believe that, I believe that there were some really amazing businesses that just didn't quite get over the line.
I want to just chime in real quick. So obviously this is a very difficult process. To everything you just described to me, go and finding those people, making sure they were not connected in any way that's going to be helpful for them, or and then teaching them this training of, hey, by the way, you're going to read through these thousands of applications, hundreds of thousands of pages potentially, over many weeks, and teach them to try not to get too tired of reading this shit and grading it. I mean, that seems pretty tough to me. But my question is, how many other states have picked this particular style of awarding those licenses? Is this, are we the first one? Are we the second? Where are we at in that process of figuring out the best way to allocate these licenses?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think anyone's really gotten it perfect yet. And part of the problem at this point, I'm going to say this carefully. I happen to know that built into the budget for many multi-state operators is the cost of applying and the cost of suing. They fully expect to sue for a license because they know if they sue, they're more likely to get a license, even if they don't get it the old-fashioned way. And so this process has become so litigious, and it's so unfortunate because so often it's localities or cities or states just trying to get it done. And if you look to Florida, for instance, the lawsuits that went down in Florida have prevented the Black farmers from even breaking ground. And it's been like, good Lord, what year is it? 2021? It's been like 6 freaking years. And it's just lawsuits holding back otherwise law-abiding individuals, good businesses, from just doing their business. And so the lawsuits have really become a problem across the board. And I just don't know if that is going to stop because so many have just built it into the business plan. That said, to your specific point, Clayton, there are other states that have done this. And I know of Arkansas having done a similar process. It was much smaller. And actually, this was one of the reasons that I thought that my partner in this, in Wise Health would be so perfect for this, is because he was part of cleaning up that process when there were accusations of, I believe in that particular case, it was accusations of conflicts of interest and nefarious behavior that was very questionable. So they brought in a new scoring team to rescore all of those. And that was when I had first heard of CHAD scoring. And then the Beyond Nevada, I mean. And then the other one just happened recently. I just read a terrible article about the process that Illinois undertook. They were supposed to have hired scorers that were experienced. Cannabis is tricky. It's complicated. You need people that understand what you're talking about in order to score those applications. You can't have, people ignorant to these issues determining licensure. But apparently that is exactly what that company that was hired did. They went and subcontracted it to some inexperienced and I'm quoting one of the individuals who was a grader said shoddily trained. So they did not feel that they received sufficient training, and they had no cannabis experience, and that's who just graded for Illinois. So you think Missouri's bad? Actually, y'all did pretty good. Yeah. And, even going back to who you chose, there were 5 companies that applied to have the benefit of scoring. And I think 3 were attorneys and 1 had 0 experience. So it was, it was also, by the way, a hell of a lot more expensive. I know that Wise Health got shat upon in one of the articles, but the reality is we actually received, when it comes to vendors and scoring, we received very high scores. It was statistically significant at how experienced our graders and our team really were for this particular project.
I think that's good. It's important. It's good for me to know. I've read about some things that were published where you'd made comments about how that team was assembled. I think it's good that it was kept separate from OU, keeping those 2 missions separate, that sort of thing. That it was a good thing. But a moment ago, I do want to go back. A moment ago, you implied that you did your own analysis on how well your scores did, or how, the consistency of that and those sorts of things. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I mean, was that a pretty formal process? Was it anecdotal? What'd you guys do there? Because, I would assume that either you're like, screw that was no fun, I don't want to do that again, or hey, that wasn't too bad, I think we could do it again. I'm assuming you'd want to do better. What'd you do in terms of improving for that next time?
Well, knowing that no 2 states are alike, no 2 processes are alike, we did undergo statistical analysis, and it's also a matter of public record in our training binder. The roles were split. So I was the training and compliance manager on this particular project. So I handled the training of the graders. My partner handled the statistical analysis, and then we had a former sheriff and a former prosecutor as our team leads, who helped the graders along anytime they had any issues or questions. They were also carefully trained not to lead the graders. The only individuals that could assign a score was the grader themselves. And that was also part of their training and part of what we needed them to attest to. As far as the statistical analyses, I can't speak to the specific process that was undertaken in the day-to-day, but I can share with you that it was not oh, thank God it's done and just put it in a frickin' drawer. The breadth and scope of the scores were looked at overall, and again in a blind fashion, because we were building it by question and by grader, not by applicant. And so we were looking for wild swings in the scoring. If the way that the scoring was built in the first place, it was a drop-down methodology so that there were no latent scores, meaning it wasn't a 0 that had to be changed. It was blank. And you had to assign a 0 in order for a 0 to exist. So we tried to do as much as we could to remove the human error. We looked for, of course, the blanks. We also had 2 data specialists who ran several you run formulas looking for missing data. You run formulas to look for what should be there but isn't. For instance, you mentioned having lots of attachments. We expect those attachments, and so either the grader would mention, hey, I'm missing an attachment, or I can't open an attachment because the file is corrupted. And we would be able to then go back to the state and retrieve it. So we also had a meticulous process to make sure that none of the data packets were dropped or missed or otherwise misassigned. I do believe that it was built. I mean, the whole process was built quickly, but it was built with experts that were not only data experts and subject matter experts, but also process experts to ensure that there was fidelity from start to end. What we did not have was AI. We didn't have a program to go match words for words. If we had had another 6 months, what I would have done with that 6 months. But we didn't. We did the best we could with humans assigned to a very large project with a short deadline. And I believe those humans took that job extraordinarily seriously. They worked very hard. And yes, they would want to do it again. They took great pride in what they did. And the statistical analysis overall, I think, I'm sure that there's a college kid out there somewhere that could go figure out the overall project and how many hundreds of thousands of pieces of data versus the tens of discrepancies and the point values therein, just on its face is extraordinarily small. And you're always going to have a margin of error in any project like this.
Yep, and attention all grad students. There might be a good
I know, I just opened
research
it up.
grad project. You're going to get calls now. Give me your data. We want to go through that.
Technical engineers up in here.
Yeah, you got to watch out.
Can I just suggest that there's way better things to spend your time and energy on?
I don't know,
Seriously.
man. That
The
might
thing
be
that
your
really
jam.
frustrates me the most, if I could just say so, am I allowed to curse on this show?
Once. Maybe
Where's
twice.
the fucking conspiracy? The people that I taught at the boot camp, none of them got a license. I have over 45 professionals, former law enforcement, DEA, sheriffs, police officers, regulators, current college professors with PhDs, all of whom would lose their jobs, lose their reputations, and it would have also required like a 45, 55, actually, if you include the tech team, a 55-person cross conspiracy with all of us keeping our mouths shut and none of us making any money off of it. What is the fucking conspiracy? Tell me that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was twice, but
That's all you get.
I still to this day, I look at the timeline, I look at the accusations, and I would have needed a time machine to go back, and then I still can't figure out what the conspiracy is. It was a bunch of folks in the state trying to hire the best team they could find, and the best team that we could find trying to do the best job we could do for the citizens of Missouri to try to get the best possible medical cannabis industry off the ground in hopes that it will be followed by an adult industry so that we can finally stop criminalizing people. Because I'll go back to this, is about decriminalizing people.
That's right. That's right. And I think for our part too, we're already looking forward in Missouri to, what's that next step, right? I could see that Missouri being on an accelerated path compared to other states with quickly moving to adult use. I mean, the acceptance is here. Anecdotal polling is good, right? I think we need some formal polls, but those have been done, at least in some fashion, and even with a limited license cap, those polls seem to turn out okay. So,
well, and I think it's important too, if you've got those college students, I'd like to take a look at traffic accidents and deaths. I'd like to take a look at the reduction in driving under the influence of alcohol since you've legalized medical cannabis. I would like to take a look at the reduction in domestic violence. I would like to take a look at the reduction in overdose deaths. I'd like to take a look at the reduction in veteran suicides. That's where we spend our time and our energy.
Let's give it
to show our leaders that this is worth it and that we can do it.
Totally.
And that we have better days ahead by decriminalizing, descheduling, legalizing for all adults.
Totally, but let's wait till the COVID thing is over so we can get some of those skewed results out of that little measurement. Because I'm sure that everybody's on a whole nother different level with COVID and isolation and all that. So those numbers will be useful once we get past all of this.
That's fair. That's fair. But thank God that you had medical cannabis at least for most of it, and that the states that had allowed it declared it to be essential. I'm so grateful for that, because of how many lives probably were saved in having cannabis as a harm reduction technique, even if it's just not having that half bottle of Jack Daniels. I came out of a really violent relationship previously, and oh God, I prayed that he would just smoke a joint instead of pick up that Jack. So just having an alternate, just harm reduction.
It's true. And that's why Big Beverage isn't such a big fan of adult use in particular, much less medicinal. You know what I'm talking about.
Alcohol companies came out against Prop 19. The Brewers Association came out against Prop 19 back in the day. And what was remarkable is the smaller brewers came out against the Brewers Association. Because they're like, wait a minute, I'd like to, hops and cannabis are very, very similar. I would like to grow hops, please.
That's right.
Or I already grow
related.
hops. I'd like to grow cannabis, please. We're actually okay with legalization. We're not okay with you spending our association dollars on preventing it. But the pharmaceutical companies, the private prison companies, the private treatment facilities, it's not a giant conspiracy. It's just a bunch of little ones, and you follow the money, and they all agree that cannabis should stay illegal.
Yep, that's the song I think we're going to hear for a while. But all we can do is keep, fighting the good fight, educating people, right? I mean, that's the core of it. That's why we came together originally tonight, and I don't want to diminish that. Folks, there's still time to win that scholarship. We're running low, though. Got to get those folks in here quick.
Tag a friend. Lots of good giveaways. We have a lot of questions. I think some of the questions that have been coming in, we've already sort of covered. So I'm not sure if we want to try to jump back into any of those. It's your
I think we've done as best we can. We could really skewer it and pick at it, and that sort of thing. But, that's not why we came here originally. You really have humored me, and I've expressed that, hey, this is what the viewers are asking here in Missouri. Can we talk about it a little bit? And thanks for that. And thanks, too, for not putting up any fences. You very well could have told me, hey, these questions are off limits, and this, and this, and this, and this. We've had that happen before, but that didn't happen here, and that was very gracious of you. And I'm not here to argue. I wouldn't argue with anything. I really just wanted to hear your story from your point of view, and that's what you laid out for us. And I'm hoping that, are you going to come back to Missouri at some point, do a little more training out here? Going to let the dust settle for a while? What do you think?
Yeah, I do hope to come back to Missouri. I was actually really bummed that I was like, wait a minute, did scoring just prevent me from educating? Shit. That would be a reason not to ever do this again, because education really is my heart. But the long and short of it is, even though I don't participate with the licenses directly, I decided to just follow my own team and just stay out for 2 years and not tempt any misunderstandings or visions of impropriety. So I was disappointed, but just realized it would be probably better to wait. In the meantime, Oaksterdam is online. We're based in your living room, so it's no longer a campus that you come to. We have both self-paced and virtual courses. So the school is everywhere, and anyone can come and learn. I'm not demanding that my team go on site anytime this year, but we do hope to get back out next year and start to get more hands-on activities. I do suspect that we will attend some events here and there, just to, bring the education, because that's what we love to do. And,
Yes.
it's important to realize as well that, there's a lot of folks out there that, you've already done something in your life. You've already had experience, whether it's customer service experience or sales experience, manufacturing. There are so many things that folks already come with, whether it's HR or marketing, janitorial services. So part of what our Business of Cannabis course offers is just helping to find your place in the industry. So many folks, they know they want to get in, but they don't really know what to do with themselves, or how to, bust through that entry-level position, because they have extensive experience and maybe they want to get to that C-suite or next level. And so the Business of Cannabis course really just helps folks find their place in the industry, whether you're trying to get into the industry yourself and get hired by a company or start a company. But also if you're just trying to interface as a professional, you have to understand the pain points of your customers. So if you are a marketing agency, you need to understand the limitations around marketing cannabis, that Facebook is going to put you in Facebook jail if you try to advertise this on those types of platforms, and that you're not going to get it in to the New York Times necessarily, but you could get in on earned media, but you can't get in on advertised media. So just
Letters
like
to
the tips
the
and
editor.
tricks,
Come on.
right? Of how to do this. If you're a CPA, you need to understand the tax situation with 280E and cost of goods sold. So that type of program will either, help you figure out your place in the industry or how you can serve the industry from the place that you are. And then the other courses just kind of drill down more from there. If you're entry level, we meet you where you are, but we also get hella technical. As we say in Oakland, hella, that the expert practitioners have been doing this for a really long time. So there are plenty of Easter eggs for folks that have also been doing this for a really long time. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how long you've been doing it. There's always a way to improve your yield, improve your process, learn something new about the technologies that are coming out, learn something new about a way to advocate with your city council while you're sitting there. Maybe learn about a new opportunity from the person sitting next to you in class. And so there's a tremendous amount that comes with the student experience that's beyond the written word. And a lot of that is the spirit of Oaksterdam. And just knowing that we can do better in this industry, that we can do better together, and that we can do good while we do good, I hope people are successful.
For sure. And that's
tithe back to those that need it most.
That's a part of what we talk about here pretty frequently as well. It's about community. I give away so much knowledge, personally. I coach a number of folks on how to get it done. I blog about, the way I grow, because that's what I know. I'm not a master grower. I just do my thing pretty good, pretty okay. Patients are happy. So, that's what it's about for me. And, and when you see, especially from that medical perspective, and you see somebody try something that you've given them, see it work for them, and all of a sudden they're functioning better and they feel normal, because hell, most of the time I don't want to get high. I just want to feel normal. I want to be able to walk like a normal human being and not, make it obvious that I'm gimping around all over the place. But anyway, everybody's got those stories.
But what you said was so important, though. Can I interrupt you to just point out how important that is? Because so many folks, you've got to tell your story. Your story is your superpower. And folks understanding who you are and why you're doing it, that it's you. It's not that scary drug dealer in the corner. It's you. They know you. They love you. They trust you. But it's also turn that around. It's just a bunch of able-bodied young men riding their skateboard up to get some weed. Really? Because what does cancer look like in a 20-year-old when they're just trying to look normal? Aren't all of us just trying to look normal and just be okay and when others are looking. And that's like, how do you measure a patient? And so I appreciate your spirit of education. I have been so impressed with Evolution Magazine, with how much you have outreached your community, from the print to the spoken word. We went into lockdown across the country, and now you're reaching people far beyond where you drop your magazines. And it's folks like you, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners and the people that are involved in your trade association that think like you, that this is what's going to make this industry better for women, veterans, people of color, equity, community, patients. We can rise all ships by just expecting a little better out of each other. And I'm so grateful for you in Missouri and all that you do.
That's right.
Happy
That's
birthday.
Right. And
you
Happy
know what?
birthday.
I wish we had another hour to talk about rising all those ships. We're going to have to do that here in the future.
Yeah,
but we got a killer guest for next month, too.
Yeah, so Max Montrose, you know Max, with the Trichome Institute. He's going to come on our show with the MCIA show next month. And so, you know, we've kind of, the past year, we've really like focused internally on who's doing what and how we can help each other. And now I think this next year, we'll keep doing that, but we'll also like bring in, you know, how can we look at what other people are doing that have been doing it for a while, and take bits and pieces of that.
That's the trouble with doing it a while. You become a controversial figure, and you spend half your time talking about that.
Most of my time talking.
I want to plug Max Montrose, though, because our bud tending program is actually very different from his sommelier program, and I think that they make a lovely pair, if you will, because he gets into the terpenes and the flavonoids and the olfactory experience, where we stick more to the retail and the science and the dosing. So it's really a lovely pairing, and I would strongly recommend both programs.
I've hung with Max, and he's probably one of my favorite geeks.
Yeah, he's a great geek.
He's
He's one of my favorite geeks too. I hope you tell him that when he is here.
I will. Right to his face.
I never knew like how much I love cactuses until I watched Max.
That too.
An education, awesome. I'm telling you, it is lovely.
It's true. Well, we appreciate
hopefully your
you.
listeners will come to Oaksterdam.com, because we do have free classes on there. Cannabis and pain. The exit from opiates is free, as well as advocacy is free. And we also threw in a seeds class for free.
Nice.
Yes.
Everybody likes free.
Yes.
So go get some
Free
free
is
stuff.
good.
What was the
It's
website
perfect
again?
for your doctor, though. The opiates and exit strategy is really good to show. If you've got somebody on pills that just, they're having trouble getting off the prescription, or they're not getting their prescription anymore, cannabis really is the exit strategy. It helps reduce withdrawal, and becomes a much safer substitute step down while you get over the addiction to opiates. So I strongly recommend that course. It's why we put it out for free as a public service. Please do pass that along to somebody in your life that might need that information. It's research based.
Yep, that's right. And I say it frequently. I said it on the last show. At this point, information's your armor, because the number one thing that a naysayer is going to tell you is, well, there's not enough research, we don't know. They're just singing that same old song. And you don't even have to argue with them. You just throw down a humongous stack of research. It's there, and it's voluminous. There's a lot of it. Way bigger than my 5
That's why we got to
ring
legalize research.
Yeah.
No, very true. Very true.
Yep. Thanks
Well,
again.
don't forget about that coupon of Evo 100, and I think Evolution
Yes.
100 will also work. We did both just in case.
So that's how you get the $100 off the courses, and then we're going to give away a scholarship, tag a friend to bring them in. Any last minute thoughts?
I think that ends in 30 days, something like that.
Yeah.
The Evo 100.
End of May. We're actually giving you
2021.
almost 2 months, because I wanted to make sure if anybody watched this show anywhere in the month of April, they could still take the class all the way through the end of May. So
right.
if you are watching this, that code will work until the end of May.
So you can use that code on their website, and then for the scholarship, I'm going to go back in, look and see who's tagged the most people, brought them into the conversation. We're going to give them a scholarship. Also, 2 free gift cards to Kansas City Cannabis Company, just recently opened up. Any last minute
That's
thoughts
right.
over here?
I'm
Take
coming
us
home, Jody. I'm
All
coming
right.
home soon.
I'll take us home. So once again, Coco Labs, we're going to be doing a live show next Thursday from their manufacturing facility. We're going to show you the inside and outside and all the details of how they're doing, what they're doing, what products they're rolling out. Kansas City Cannabis Company on 420 live broadcast, bringing in April Hatch, Lee Carr, bringing in Todd Scatini, Big V, Zach, all of the local influencers in the industry that you may well know. James Thomas, of course, bringing him in as well. He'll be actually running the whole show. I'll just be the guy talking on the camera. Big thanks to Happy Rock Farms for letting us shoot here today. Thank you so much. Cat King Films. Behind the camera there. And then once again, Max Montrose. I think earlier I said cactuses, and I believe it's cacti. And we'll get to the bottom of that with
I let it slide. It's
Max
cool.
will know.
We'll get to the bottom of that with next month's show with Max Montrose on MCIA's show. Thanks so much, Del, for being here tonight. Appreciate you speaking in. I think that's all I got. So thanks for tuning in, you guys. Peace, love. We'll see you next time.
Thank
Later.
you.